Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have all of you here, and I'm really excited to be talking to Rhonda, who is the newest member of the Oft Class teacher community. Rhonda, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so today what I want to do with Rhonda is just talk about, I want to ask you some questions about online ESL teaching and about your journey and how you got to be where you are. And then I want to talk about something that I think a lot of teachers struggle with, which is just group classes, because I know that that is something that you do and that's something that a lot of people want to do and have lots of questions on how to make that work well, because it can be kind of a logistical problem. So why don't we start off? Rhonda, tell us about your background and how you got into online ESL.
Sure. Well, I'm a certified classroom teacher, and I taught in the classroom many years ago. And then about 12 years ago, I started working with our local literacy council and started connecting with adults who were learning English and fell in love with working with them, and worked in the nonprofit sector of ESL teaching. And then last year, I decided to start out on my own, and I was meeting students at community centers and doing face-to-face classes. And then when coronavirus started restricting that, I decided to regroup and took about a month off and made a website, stumbled upon Off to Class and started from there.
Okay.
Online.
So the students you have now, are those the students that you met initially in like those face-to-face environments?
A few, but most of those students in the past were older, retired people who were really liked the face-to-face interaction and didn't really want to transition to online. So I took your advice from a video I saw you do about rethinking who your ideal client might be, and just decided I needed to not try to keep going with those people if they weren't interested, and to work on finding new people. So it's really been spreading by word of mouth and from people who I've known in the past.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question, is that how were you able to make that transition in terms of finding those new students who were more of your ideal clients?
Yeah, so word of mouth, and then just the website and putting myself out there on Instagram and Facebook. I've found a few clients through that. Although that is a slow process. So
Sure. Yeah.
Nothing is very quick.
Right.
So I'm working on that. And one of my goals for the future is to really work on finding some new business clients. And I've worked with a couple in that aspect. So that is something I'd like to pursue in the future.
Yeah, I think that is a very common thing, that sometimes people want social media to work right away. You know, they feel like
Right.
if they put a post out on Facebook that says, book a free trial with me, you know, that will lead to people doing it. And often it doesn't. And often when it does, it's often not the type of clients that we want to be working with. So,
Correct.
and one of the things we've talked about in the past is about how with social media, you really have to treat it like a long game. You know, it's not a quick fix. And it's something that the way that you can improve your social media following is by creating helpful content, instead of content that's just, you know, oh, here, I'm an English teacher and this is why you should learn with me, making things that are helpful for people.
I think that if you start thinking about putting out content that your current students would find interesting, then, you know, build on that. And you're helping the clients you have on social media with some content. And over time, I think people will find that.
I really think that's a great piece of advice to say, you know, because a lot of times we think, oh, what am I going to post? But to post things that would be helpful to your current students. That's a great place to start. Questions that someone might ask in a class.
Correct. So someone asks a question, or what does that word mean? How do you do this? Write that down, and then you can make a post about it.
That's great. And that's such a barrier to
Mhm.
creating content is we say, oh, what will I make? But if you just write down every question your student asks you,
Right.
and that's kind of the nice thing too about social media. You don't have to make a 15-minute YouTube video. You can make a 60-second Instagram video, and that can answer,
Right.
even the very simple questions. Okay. So I don't want to go too deep into social media because one of the
Okay.
things I really want to talk to you is about groups. So you do
Mhm.
group classes, and a lot of people have questions about groups. So I guess let's just start broad. How do you make it work logistically?
Well, it's not easy, but if you just pick the day and the time and start there, because otherwise you'll have everyone saying, I want this day, this time, and you can't do a group for each of those people.
Right.
So pick the clients that are already interested in working with you,
Okay.
and find out what their ideal time and day might be, and then you can work on that and build on that time. So I started with just one group, and
Mhm.
now I have 3 groups that are divided
Wow.
by level.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So you talk to them first to get a general idea of their availability.
Correct.
Okay.
So when do you want to meet, or you want to meet after work? Do you have kids that you want to meet during school time? So you
Mhm.
can work around that.
Okay. And so you get the general idea of their availability, and then
Mhm.
it sounds like you just choose the time that you feel like is going to be best.
That's correct. So you, my advice is to pick maybe twice a week, maybe
Okay.
for an hour
Mhm.
each meeting, and then make that an event. I call it an event.
Mhm.
And what I'm currently doing is a session of 6 weeks. So when
Okay.
they sign up for the 6-week session,
Mhm.
and that's 12 lessons that they're getting. And then they can continue if they want after that, because everyone's schedule is difficult. Not everyone wants to commit to a semester,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you have to make it in increments that are helpful for them.
Okay, that's helpful. That's a little bit related because a lot of times one-on-one lessons or even group lessons,
Hmm.
something like learning a language, it can take years. And
Right.
if you just have these lessons that they have no end, it becomes hard to set milestones, so you lose track of goals. And
Hmm.
after a while, people just, they tend to lose interest. Like it's almost like a gym membership. You do it for a
Right.
while and then you get bored of it and then you stop going. So by having these 6 weeks, it sounds like, okay, students know what they're signing up for. They're signing up for
Right.
something, and it makes it clearly defined, and it helps set goals because this is where I am now, and I see, it's not 5 years from now, and I have some really undefined, lofty goal like fluency.
Right.
Instead, you can set really meaningful and measurable goals, so that's at the end of 6 weeks, someone can say, "Oh, I've made a tangible improvement that I know and can see and can feel good about, and that can inspire me to want to continue to do more of
Correct.
this."
And you can talk to the students after each student individually after the 12 lessons, and they can see improvement. And not only that, the grouping people together is just more fun. You just have a little
Yeah,
bit more fun as a group, and they connect with each other. Now they have some speaking partners to practice outside of class. They see
yeah,
they're not alone in the process, and it's fun.
yeah. I only did groups when I worked for a company, and
Hmm.
this was like 2013. But they were really fun because
Hmm.
you develop a rapport with the group, and they know each other and you know them, and so then you can
Hmm.
have this really interesting dynamism, very much like in an in-person classroom,
Hmm.
but that is hard. You just miss that with one-on-one. So let me ask you, do you use any fancy scheduling software? or anything like that?
Well, I have some for private students,
Hmm.
but what I've done for the group classes is I just call it an event, and then they sign up for that event. When they look on my website, they can see when the event starts, which days the event meets, and they don't get to choose different times for that event. That's the event that I've chosen and the time, and then they choose that to sign up for.
Okay. So it sounds like what you've done is you just have tried to solve the logistics problem in the simplest way possible. Is that accurate?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. When some of these discussions among teachers talk about what scheduling software should I use, and does it integrate with my email and all of these things, and sometimes you can just kind of turn yourself in circles trying to solve a problem. And it's maybe not even a problem that we're having right now. It's a problem that, I want to teach groups in the future. So I think I need to
Right.
work all of this out right now. But what I'm hearing from you is that some of that stuff isn't necessary. That for you, it
Yeah.
can be as simple as, when are you available? Well, I'm going to pick the time that I think works best.
Yeah, I think that's great. And when you're setting up your group, think about, the minimum amount of students you want and the maximum amount, so that you can make sure you organize that properly, because you don't want just one person signing up for a group.
Right.
So, and
Right.
you maybe, I think the ideal size is about 4 to 6 people. So you might consider that as well.
Okay. So how do you handle situations where, has it ever happened where there's no good time? Like, what happens then?
Um, well,
Or if
actually, I haven't
someone
had
can't make it,
that. Oh, so you mean if someone says I can't make this particular
Yeah,
day?
yeah, it's either one. So if you haven't had a
Okay.
situation where there's no good time, what happens if someone just can't make a lesson or something?
Okay. Well, there was one incident with one group. It was a group of, I think, 3 students, and there were 2 people who couldn't make it because of the local school district of some sort. And so we just rescheduled that one.
Okay.
And that's only happened once. But if there's one student who can't make it, then I typically will just record the lesson on Zoom
Sure.
and then send it to them and tell them to follow along using Off to Class, because I've already enrolled them in that lesson, so they can just go follow along. I make sure I say, okay, I'm on the slide that says this.
Oh, great.
And then they can follow along with the recording of the class.
That's fantastic. So that takes something that's a recording, which is typically, it's more passive than actually participating in a class. And by having the student log into Off to Class, it's giving them a way to interact with the material.
Yes.
Instead of just watching a video and not doing anything.
Right.
Fascinating. Okay. And that leads right into my next question. You just answered a little part of it. How do you use Off to Class to make what you do work?
Okay. Well, I always give them the placement test, which can also be a little difficult with groups, because when you're starting with an individual, you're usually starting right on those skills where that student, is lacking.
Yeah.
But with a group, sometimes you kind of have to start the student a little bit higher or a little bit lower than what they might normally do as an individual. But I find that that's okay. And if a student is a little behind, I can send them some additional work, or maybe I'll use WhatsApp to send them some speaking work. And if a student's a little above the group, I can go to that placement test and then send them the skills that they were a little behind on. So that's helpful. And I enroll each student in a class on Off to Class, and then that's how I start the lesson, with starting the class. And then the homework is great because they can do that on their own. It's very modern. I really like that part of it.
Yeah. So something you said that's really stuck out to me is, you said how, the placement test shows you the some specific skills that people need to work on. So do you do a type of thing where, let's say we have 4 people in a class. Okay, so we're going to work on common things that everyone needs, but then maybe assigning people almost as like self-study activities that are specific to their own weaknesses?
Well, what I've been doing with the groups is starting in either the A1, the B1, picking the level and
Sure.
working through the levels.
Mm-hmm.
And then if something I see is that all students need help on, I can go to some of the other skills and off to class. But then, yes, to answer your question, if there is a student who is a little bit bored in that level because they're a little higher, then I can send them some additional things they missed from their placement test.
Okay. So Rhonda, what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out in online ESL or hasn't even started yet? What would you tell them is the most important thing to focus on or to do right now?
Well, I think about the people you already know that might need some help and start contacting them. Try not to get overwhelmed with all of the things available. You can't all do YouTube, Instagram,
Right.
have a great website. So maybe focus on, one thing. I would recommend a website because that will be what people will look for you on. And start talking to the people you already know.
Absolutely. I think that's so important because I think sometimes people can overlook who is already in their own network. And it's always so much easier to get students from than to those who you already have some sort of connection to, rather than the great wide world of the internet, which seems like, but I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think that's something that is helpful for a lot of teachers who are starting out.
And most of my clients are local, and so you don't have to find people all over the world.
Right. And that's another great thing too, is that if it's possible to find students in your local community, number one, that reduces the time zone issue, right? So it makes the time zone issue go away. It also can help with credibility, because you're not a stranger on the internet. You are a real person who actually lives in their community. So that sometimes can add some like reliability. So I think that's really helpful advice. So Rhonda is a member of the Off to Class teacher community. And for those of you who don't know what that is, we host teacher profiles on the Off to Class website that you as a teacher can share with your communities or online, so that students can come and see your profile, and you can have a link on that page that students can book a time with you, whether it's a trial lesson or a paid first lesson, or just sending them to your website. If you have one, you can do it right from that site. So if you would like to have your teaching profile on the Off to Class teacher community, there's a link below this video that you can use to fill out the application process so that you can be featured on the website. Rhonda, it's been such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.